Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. It's afternoon where I'm at. It might be morning where you are. My name is Lewis, and you are watching the Occupied Zero YouTube video channel, but you probably already know that. This video in particular, I'm going to try and keep to a real narrow focus, and that focus is on the Black Lives Matter protests and protesters. If there is any way that I could tap into the energy that you guys have for Black Lives Matter and convert some of that energy into Occupied Zero, we could get a lot accomplished working together rather than working separately and not knowing about what each other's doing. I'm going to be contacting every single Black Lives Matter chapter or organization that I can in the coming months. It's probably going to be a couple of months, well, I don't know, it could be quicker than that depending on how many other people I have to contact first. Occupy Zero is a protest against the gross inequalities of capitalism and the imperialist nature of the United States of America, which is not going to work good in our favor. Being imperialists, empires rise and empires fall. And right now, you're looking at what I think are probably the last days of America as we know it. Sorry, something just crashed in, almost crashed into me. The system is unfair, and the system is racist, and it was built by unfair, racist people. And, you know, one of the things I always want to tell the Black Lives Matter folks is the problem does not stop at the police departments. Yes, defunding the police and allocating the money and putting it into social programs is a fantastic idea. We should have done it decades ago. But it does not get rid of the drug laws. Oh, you know, if you were born after the year 1990, I'm not even sure if you understand that there was a war on drugs and that we're still in the middle of that war. When you're talking about no-knock warrants, that's the war on drugs right there. When you're talking about shoot first and ask questions later as police policy, that's because of the war on drugs. The war on drugs created all of these problems. And until we change the law, it's almost unreasonable to expect police to act in a manner that's better than the way that they're acting now if the laws that they enforce are manifestly unjust and cruel and wicked. If the law is the problem, then you could go after the cops all day. You're not going to solve the problem. But I do think that the Black Lives Matter people have done, you guys have done a masterful job of, Derek Chauvin went to prison. I mean, and, you know, my mom and I were discussing it tonight, and I know I'm speaking from a position of white privilege, and I understand that. But we were talking about what happens and, you know, why these people are getting shot and killed. And, you know, we were talking about the fact, you know, is there such a thing as a good cop? Because with the Derek Chauvin, George Floyd murder, there were 3 other cops or 4 other cops. I can't remember if it was 3 or 4. I think it's 3 other cops that were literally standing right there. And you're telling me that a guy who's pinned on the floor, who's been handcuffed with, you know, probably a 200-something pound guy on his neck, you're telling me that him and the other 3 guys couldn't get George Floyd into the back of the squad car? Really? You're going to tell me that 4 cops, all there, all on the scene, any one of them could have stopped that madness, and they said nothing. They did nothing. And, you know, this is just See, the Black Lives Matter movement is only a smaller subset of a much larger problem that we have. And the problem is our system of economics and our system of politics. Economics controls our politics. In other words, we live and die by corporate decree. And corporate decree is what decided, since they couldn't create... See, back in the 1960s, the hippies and the anti-war protesters and the Black Panthers all had something in common. First of all, they all wanted an end to the Vietnam War. They wanted an end to the draft. They wanted an end to all of it. And they went to a good deal of trouble to try and get us out of Vietnam. Our government responded to that by creating a war on drugs. And because they knew that some of the top leaders of the hippies and the anti-war protesters were big pot smokers and pot growers, and they also understood that people in the Black Power movement, the Black Panthers, they didn't want them to have power. So, if you get drugs involved in there, the government's going to come in. And so what the government did basically is they started a war on drugs in 1970. They kicked it up a few notches when Reagan became president. That's when they really started, just crashing into people's houses with demolition units and no-knock warrants and, cops arming themselves to the teeth with AR-15s and sniper rifles and all the rest of it. It's a war. And it's a war that the United States federal government declared on the citizens of the United States of America, and especially Black people and Latinos, especially, and Asians to a lesser extent. Black people, they didn't want people to have black power. They didn't want the black community. I am thoroughly convinced, and if this makes me sound crazy, it makes me sound crazy. I am thoroughly convinced that Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls were killed by our government because they were getting too big, because they were smart. Tupac wasn't just some gangster rapper. He was a poet. He was an actor. He had his entire life ahead of him. He was an incredibly talented person and a nice guy to boot. But then there's the other side of him, which came from the street. That's why there's Tupac. And we were robbed of that. The black community was robbed again. And, when the black community tried to empower themselves through hip-hop music, gotta watch this intersection here. And now I've lost my train of thought. Yes, George Floyd should have never happened, and we should hope that it never happens again. But getting back to the war on drugs, this is where all of these military tactics came from. And the thing that should really bother people about the war on drugs is that it was a war declared on people. You can't have a war against an inanimate object. It doesn't work. It's like saying, I'm going to go to war with trash. I'm going to go find people's trash cans, and I'm going to get my Japanese katana, and I'm going to go to war with the trash cans. No. In order to fight a war, you have to fight people. And the people that you're fighting are the people who live in your country. And the fact that, if Al-Qaeda had done to the United States of America what our own federal government has done to poor people, black people, Latino people, and Asian people, we should be goddamn ashamed. All right, well, I'm going to, for the sake of brevity, I'm going to try and wrap this up. I know it's almost 10 minutes. Black Lives Matter, we need your help. And I'm asking you guys to engage in a different type of protest, a completely different type of protest. It's called a general strike. And it's basically, we're gonna sit on our hands for 4 days. and not do a damn thing. If it makes money, we're not doing it. No shopping, online or offline. None. No TV. No internet. Okay, if you have to take text messages and phone calls, you know, I guess there's only so much that you can ask from people. But we need to send a clear message that we are a united front. And you could actually read the article that I wrote on the OccupyZero.com page. I wrote an article called The United Front. We on the left seriously need to get organized, and we need to coordinate with one another. Separately, we can only accomplish so much. Together, we can move mountains. And that is why I'm not just stopping at Black Lives Matter. I'm going after every single left-wing organization that has a website or an email address in any country on planet Earth. All of them. I don't care how long it takes me to get through the list. I'm going to go through the list. And when I've gone through it the first time, I'm going to come back and I'm going to go through it again. This is how dedicated I am to this cause. And in fact, I may even be calling for a hunger strike. It'll only be for 4 days. I don't know how effective it'll be. But people can't even give their TV up for 4 days. You're going to ask them to conduct a hunger strike? Boy. Because, see, I don't think most of you guys out there can do it. I mean, you think it takes a lot of effort? Yeah, it does. You got, putting together your signs and getting your clothes together and coordinating with your friends and everybody getting out there and going and marching and feeling good about it. That's great. But that's the exact opposite of Occupy Zero. We're trying to do a different type of protest. The protest of what would happen if none of us were here. What would happen if all of us stopped participating in this nonsense for 5 minutes? And when I say stop participating in this nonsense, I'm talking about this capitalist, imperialist, unjust racial system. It's all related. You cannot separate politics from economics. You cannot separate real problems that people have from politics. It's all related. It's all related. So until we end the war on drugs clearly and defined at the national level, you're not going to be able to find peace in your neighborhoods, because the cops are still going to be looking for people with, drugs or, whatever they think you might be into. A counterfeit $20 bill. Counterfeit $20 bill. Well, anyway, that's all I've got for today. I'll let you guys go. 13 minutes and 7 seconds. Black Lives Matter. They really do, and we really need your help. So please check out the website, check out the links below, check out the Twitter, check out the Facebook. I'm still banned from Facebook for the next 5 or 6 days, but don't worry, I will be back. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen, and remember, Occupy Zero. Thanksgiving. Clock is ticking.